for all the match strikers.
This is Spiritual Pyro.
All right, so we are just inside 4 episodes until Skies launches in October.
That is so incredible to me. I cannot believe it. I'm so excited.
I can't believe we're going to have that book in our hot little hands so soon.
So soon. Couple weeks. Soon. Every week we're counting down.
She's going to be so pretty.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
So I feel like we should maybe talk about her a little bit this week. Maybe give a little introduction, just a real broad overview. Introduce you guys to her, just a quick peek into
what to expect, kind of how we've shaped her over these years, and how the formatting works. It's a little bit different. Do you remember when we first pitched our proposal and the first response was, ooh, 2 authors going back and forth? I don't know. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Well, especially because it's memoir. So it's like, okay, you're going to tell your story and you're going to tell your story and you're both going to be doing that together. How are you going to be doing that? How's that going to work? Especially because my story takes place in Illinois and Arizona, and your story is taking place in Thailand and Arizona. And it's like, how's that going to work? And that's really where the magic happened, honestly. That is where this really beautiful kind of alchemy occurred between chapter by chapter, where we take turns writing back and forth, and we kind of maintain a timeline. The era stays consistent as we're telling our story, but the time and place and voice is what alternates back and forth. And we've divided the book into 3 parts. So we're telling our stories through 3 kind of different, I guess, eras. We'll nod back to Mother Taylor.
I know. It is what it is, right? Yeah. You know what I love about how that all came together, though, was even in the very, very first days of putting together that proposal and writing our outline and getting, really, really fleshing out the idea of how the book would feel. Even though there was some hesitation, right? There was some, not from us, but as it was received, as this is a style and a format that's not typically done. And we were like, yep. But but she told us what she wanted to be. And this idea that we wanted to create a dynamic that mirrors us sitting around a fire, telling our stories back and forth, one of us tells a story and that makes the other one remember a time and tell another story. And that volleying back and forth is actually just the true nature of conversation. And we really wanted our book and our story and the whole of that to reflect that. This back and forth, this mutual exchange, this reciprocity of storytelling. So this really unusual format of 2 authors writing memoir, taking turns going back and forth between the chapters, that was so unusual to our agent at first, to our publisher at first, actually kind of has become a little, I don't know, it feels a little signature now for us. Like, of course, this is how we write. Of course, this is how we share our story. Because if we were sitting around a fire, this is exactly how it would go. This is how it would feel.
Yeah, it's so true. It's such a reflection of our friendship, I think, and the way that we communicate. And it feels very natural and very organic. And even as we were writing these chapters, we stayed very authentic to our own voices. I feel like we were both very careful and respectful to kind of maintain the integrity of our own voice, our own story, and really wrote out our experiences kind of separately. And then part of the magic was watching as we did bring our stories together, how naturally they flowed, and kind of that volley back and forth was so organic that it just added to this like, oh, okay, something bigger is happening here. Like this, as you say, that she continues to show us who she wants to be. And we do refer to her as she. She is her own being. Yep, guys. She is her own entity, and she has definitely her own kind of ethos. And she has evolved. She has become so many different versions of herself and continues to do that. And it has been an incredible experience to get to what has felt like partner with this creative entity, this book.
Yeah. It continues to have been an invitation every step of the way to hold her loosely and really follow her lead, and then do the hard, disciplined work of writing, right? So it's like it is this partnership. It's not like, oh, it's, none of it's us. No, there's a lot of hard work that has been put into following the lead of this story. I also think about how the concern early on was, will it confuse the reader to go back and forth? And I think that you speaking to our unique voices and our writing style, I think that is something that was so strong right off the bat and so clear, so with such distinction. And then there was also this element I remember us saying, like, we trust our readers to be able to hang with us. We trust our readers to be able to go back and forth and take the time that they need to take while walking through our stories, especially at the beginning. But we're just always confident that, no, this might be an unusual format, but our readers can hang with it.
Yeah. And I think breaking the book up into 3 parts also allowed for that kind of natural inhale, exhale, that taking the time that's needed to kind of sit with these different parts of our stories. The first part we've called Ruin, which really walks through the crisis point, kind of that moment of true ruin in our story that kind of brought us to our knees, the breaking point, the trauma, and both of us telling our stories in the ways that those experiences in our individual lives crossed over and both brought us to a place of complete devastation where we really didn't know what would come next. And from there, we moved into the next part of our lives, of our story. And in this book, that is called Rise. And that part of our story brings us to the desert. And we do a lot of walking through the desert in that part of our story.
so much walking.
Literally and figuratively, so much walking. And through that experience, we move through the book and through our life into a story of return, which is the third part of Skies. And so we thought it might be fun these next few weeks to walk with you guys through just a bit of each of those parts, starting with a part that might feel a little heavy, but we know all too well that to get to the parts that feel like that shimmering champagne pop fizz sparkle goodness, you have to be willing to sit with the hard stuff too. And so we just want to invite you. We want to invite you into some ruin with us. We'd love to share just a small piece of Skies with you.
Never before shared.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe just share some backstory and do a little storytelling. Yeah.
Let's do it. I also just want to say, do you remember how much we tried to not have the sections be 3 R's? Like we're like, so like
no alliteration.
We tried so hard to not have alliteration. And then, but it just, again, like she just told us who she wanted to be. We're like, this is just what it is. It's ruin, rise, and return. Of course it is.
I feel like that was like our petulant teenage era of like deconstruction. We're like, no,
totally,
no, that's too sermony and too like, no,
totally.
It's so precious.
And then
now.
we were like, no, it actually just
like,
is what it needs to be.
It's perfect. Yeah, I love it.
Perfect.
I have so much affection for it now. I'm like,
me too. Me too. I actually like can't imagine it any other way. And I think that is such a sweet and telling part of the story that even in creating the formatting and the structure of this book, you know, we were wrestling with her the whole time.
We really were. There were so many moments of invitation to let her fly. We held so tightly, even when we thought we were so open-handed. And I have this picture of this book kind of looking at us and going, "Oh, honey." Like,
oh, honey, I know.
I know,
honey.
Yeah, I know you think you're being so like open-handed, but like, you gotta let me fly. You gotta let me fly.
Yeah, it's like the meme that we keep sharing back and forth at the pick fewer battles. Okay, fewer still. Okay, now put some more back.
Right,
like,
right.
Fewer still. And it's like the same thing. Like every single phase of this book has been like, okay, open-handed. Okay, release that death grip more. Okay, like prying those fingers off a little bit more. Okay, even more, you know. That's been continuous. And I think even down to this final release date, you know, that we have, you know, that we just were expecting originally to have released at the beginning of September, and then, you know, seeing her get moved to October and releasing that and being willing to just, you know, be so open-handed even all the way to the very end and her beginning of launch, you know, is just a continual invitation to let her fly. Just let her fly. Okay, even more, let her fly, you know?
Yeah.
So I love that for us.
I do too. And honestly, I'm sitting here as we're getting ready to share actual words from these chapters, feeling that like, ooh, I have butterflies and I'm a little nervous. And I'm like, oh, this is another invitation to let her fly. Like actually, every day we're getting closer to this book being in the world and being in readers' hands. And she's no longer just ours. And her words are not going to just be words we know, but they're going to be words that every reader who holds her knows. And this feels like a practice of that. It's like, oh my gosh, we're about to share words. And then they're not just words we know. And that feels like a let her fly moment. We're having one right now.
We are, like, in real time. And it's different from having shared, you know, the drama of the story in our first few episodes of Spiritual Pyro. Like, this is different because these are the words that we have, like, shaped and crafted over time. Like, you know, it's like the water that cuts through stone, right? It's like these words are the canyons that have been carved over these past few years of just this constant flow of water and this constant work. And so these words that are on the page feel like so much more of an altar, a monument, you know, the cairn of where we have walked and where we've been. So to be able to share even just a couple paragraphs each feels like, I don't know, it feels like we're getting to tell a secret.
It does.
Like we're taking something out of the vault.
Totally. We're having a vault moment. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. I'm kind of nervous, but like in a good way.
I know. I'm like a little fluttery about it.
I also feel like it's important to say that like when we're reading this, it's like these are stories we wrote, but we wrote them about our real life. Like the things we're writing about are things we actually lived.
Moments that actually happened.
We lived through these moments and then time passed and we wrote these moments down and then more time passed and we're sharing these moments with you. But there was a point in time when the things we're sharing with you, we lived them. They really happened and they are real stories. And so the vulnerability of that, it's wild how even as we've been recording for the audiobook, it's every edit we've worked through as we've been preparing this book to go out into the world. It doesn't matter how much time goes by. It doesn't matter how many years pass. reading the words takes you back to that moment. And it is a practice of updating ourselves each time to go, oh, it's not happening right now again. It's that bringing back and going like, we're safe now, we're here now, but it feels so visceral. It is a real thing. And so there's a vulnerability that I think I'd imagine anyone who's written anything true about their life always has a piece of them that lives in that moment for always. And so there's a practice that feels like even like a practice of consent to say we are consenting to invite you into this part of our story in our life. And there's a kind of mutual vulnerability in that I think is really beautiful. But I want to name that. Like this is not casual for us, right?
No, not at all. In fact, it's kind of, it feels really significant. Like there's a lot of weight to be held in that. And I think when you talk about updating our parts, like I think this is, we love to joke about how this book feels like a literary event, 7, 8 years in the making.
Totally.
But, which is like, feels so large. And these things are true about our lives. And there's also this offering up of the fact that this is a situation or a moment or a glimpse of, honestly, now a younger version of ourselves, right? So we're also sharing one of our younger selves here today. And I love that because it's the updating of our parts, but it's also this offering of a younger version of ourselves, so that's language that we're constantly using in the book and then with each other. And so that's also true today is, this is like 2017, 2018 Corey and Sarah, right?
Yeah.
A lot of time has passed.
Yeah. There's something really tender about that. And I love at the beginning of our book, we take care to include really an acknowledgement of speaking to that point that, the stories that we're sharing come from younger versions of us, and that who we are is continuously growing and evolving, and that's a beautiful thing that we welcome and invite. And I think that is a really important framework just to live by. That's just a piece that's true all the time for all of us. So I love being able to kind of frame all things that way. I'm glad you named that.
I'd also venture to say that, every step that we take toward this book, toward her release, and then whether it's our audiobook reading or whether it's sharing here in an episode, is a continued part of the healing. So it feels like, we get to share this today, and it's another, like, anyone who's listening, like, this invitation is into the continued healing. Like, every time we get to tell these stories, it's a little less heavy. It's a little less burden. It's more shared. We feel a little less alone. Even now, we feel a little less alone every single time. So I don't know. I feel grateful for just every single person who's listening to bear witness, even just to these little bits that we're going to share today. Go first?
Yeah, I'm thinking I'll give just a tiny bit of context. The piece I chose to share comes on the heels of the story that I'm telling about right after Steve had submitted his letter of resignation publicly. So on the heels of that, we as a family had packed up and decided just to spend a couple nights away from away from our home just to kind of avoid the subsequent fallout. And so we were on the road driving to Madison, Wisconsin. We were living in Illinois at the time. So this is us having pulled over on the side of the road to actually push publish on that resignation letter. And so I will just share. I'll just share a little bit of my heart and soul with you. This was my goodbye just as much as it was his. I walked back to the car, flowers in my hair and stuffed into pockets, ochre and marigold smeared across my tear-streaked cheeks. I reached for his hand while he held the laptop open, fingers lingering over the tiny box labeled publish. Together, we took a deep breath and pressed down. It was done. I gently pulled the laptop from him and set it under my seat, laying small flowers on top. And suddenly, he was leaning heavy into my arms, the weight of a man shaking with unspeakable grief replacing the soft air of flowers. My hair was wet with his tears and mine, our kids both asleep in the back seat, blissfully unaware of the gut-wrenching memorial we'd just created. We turned off our phones and got back on the road, the worn asphalt seeming like an ocean as huge storm clouds rumbled, emptying overhead. How fitting, I mused. Let it all out. Let it pour and rage and scream and howl. Let it rush and flash and thunder hard. Let it pool and sink and permeate. Let it crack open seeds and give life to something beautiful. I thought of the women who had first spoken up about sexual misconduct. I imagined them as oceans too, swirling and brimming and brewing. Rivers snaking across dry earth, searching and unrelenting in their pursuit of the truth. I thought of my friend and her trembling, pale face in my doorway. I thought of the former assistant and her unshakable commitment to speak up. I thought of the many times we tried to get the church leadership to do the right thing, to love like the Jesus they claimed. I thought of Corinne speaking truth to power in Thailand. I thought of all the women I knew in all sorts of ways who faced similar repercussions for speaking up about corruption and abuse. I imagined all of us gathering at the mouth of a canyon, streaming and crashing and rumbling, waters charged with such wild energy, forces to be reckoned with. Women bringing water to dry lands, cracking open sick systems and exposing inequity and creating opportunities for new life and beauty to flourish. I looked down at the flower I'd been mindlessly spinning in my fingers as we drove, holding it tightly and clasping my hands together. I didn't know what prayer was anymore, but I wondered if it might feel something like this. All rain crashing and hearts breaking and small bursts of hope mixing in some mystical chorus of me toos and with yous. I closed my eyes and let the tears fall, feeling solidarity with the rain as it slid down our windshield and we drove away from everything we'd ever known. Whew. That was from a chapter in Rune called Exile.
God, I love that one.
Yeah.
I want to come back to one of my favorite lines in this piece, but also I think it's one of my favorites. Not because it's so poetic as your writing voice just is. I mean, it's like your hallmark. It's your calling card. But really because of the thread that it weaves through your storytelling, the line where you say, blissfully unaware of the gut-wrenching memorial we'd just created, this moment of complete annihilation, ruin, as a memorial, a moment on the side of the road that is this combination of beauty and the wild force of nature, but it being this big, big grief mixed with relief, which often is what a memorial is. That has stuck with me since you first wrote that line, since that first draft of this piece. But this moment on the side of the road, the kid's asleep in the back, blissfully unaware, and this memorial that you two held together. So I don't know. I would love to kind of camp on that for a second. And that theme of death is really kind of the core of Ruin for both of us. And how does that feel in thinking about it as a memorial? How does that feel all this time later, even as you can still, I know, feel it in your body as you read it?
Yeah. I think it's I appreciate what you said. And by the time we had made this decision, I mean, we had exhausted ourselves trying to find any other way to avoid having to come to that decision, to finally have to get to the point where resigning was the choice that had to be made. And it was over months and months of time to finally get to that point and truly feel like our hand was essentially forced. And there's a sense of exhaustion and strange relief that comes when you finally make a decision, even if it's a painful one. The liminal kind of space between knowing what you're going to do, what's next, how's this going to go, that was so agonizing, and it lasted for so long that I think that the time of death, calling time of death, even though really, as dramatic as it sounds to say, like driving away from everything we knew, like, yeah, we had no idea what was coming next. We didn't have like a severance. We didn't know what the next day was going to bring. And yet there was peace. I felt such peace because I knew we were living in alignment within ourselves.
Yep.
Like we had done what felt right by us and what we knew within us to be the right thing to do. And I don't know, you can't buy that. You can't fake that. There's nothing you can sell out for that. And so I think there was a strange sense of peace that I felt getting back on the road. And as much as the subsequent weeks, I think definitely, you come out of that peace and you're like, oh shit. And there's a ton of grief that comes after, and a ton more. In that immediate sense, in that moment, it was kind of like a bubble of relief and in having made a decision, and just kind of a strange sense of like, oh yeah, this, as painful as it was the right decision. Yeah.
And there's no guarantee, right? There's no trophy for making the right decision on the side of the road that day. Nobody was calling to reward you for your courage and your bravery with some sort of guarantee of what would come next. It was all unknown. And I think the space that exists in between making that right decision and what comes next can feel like an eternity.
Yeah.
Not knowing, but having to trust. I don't know, that alignment is the only thing that we get to hold on to.
That's so true. And you know that exact feeling. I know you know. Yeah.
I think about so many of the things that overlap for us, right? In this story, your kids are blissfully unaware. And yet they did experience enough things along the way in your decision-making process to where It's not like they didn't know that hard things were going on. It's not like they didn't know that there was stress or disruption happening within their life, within their world. And I don't know, I just maybe speak to what that was like for them to be in the back seat during this memorial, and, you know, our desire to protect our kids as mothers. Thinking back to that, they're so little at that point.
They were so young. I mean, Emerson was, 4 or 5, you know? No, Mercy was 4 or 5, and Emerson, I think, was like 9 or 10. I mean, they're so young. And how do you explain, you know, what's going on? And I think even having that big of an age gap, it's like what we can explain, what Emerson's able to hold is so different than what Mercy's able to hold at that age. And and we were so upside down. It's like how I would handle it out of crisis myself or versus within crisis myself is so different. And how I will handle it and how I would handle it now, so many years removed and so many years older and wiser versus, you know, there's so many factors to all of that. I look back with so much compassion and empathy, like, oh, hun, you know, all the way around. I look back now and I'm glad that they were sleeping in that moment.
It's like, just stay asleep, please. Right? Just stay asleep a little bit longer.
Yeah, like a kindness to that they were spared that. And also it allowed Steve and I to be Steve and I. We didn't have to wear the parent hat in that moment, and we could just grieve a little bit. We had a moment, you know. I'm glad for that.
That's actually really beautiful.
We had to wear a lot of hats most of the time. As you did, you know, again, what's so beautiful about our friendship, and this is such specific types of trauma and woundedness. And so one of the gifts of walking through that time was having you, because I could say this and you're like, you know, like, but you actually really know, and that's rare. And so, yeah, to have had a moment of grief, a stolen moment of grief, just the two of us, and to just be ourselves for a minute was a gift. Yeah. I would love to hear your piece, if you would like to share it with us, your piece of ruin.
Yeah. I do want to echo your words about I'm still in awe of, like, what are the chances that our friendship could have the timing and the capacity to be such a lifeline in that reciprocity for one another. Like, I would have never wished it upon you or any of my other friends to be able to relate so deeply to what I was going through. And yet it made the world feel so much smaller and so much closer to, for us to be so connected through these wildly traumatic experiences. Every time I think about it, I'm like, what are the chances that we would have been going through this at the same time? What are the chances? And I don't try to figure that out anymore. You know, I just am so thankful. I'm just really thankful. So I think it's also what makes this book so beautiful is that is the thread that just weaves all the way through.
Yeah. Incredibly fortunate to have had each other and to have had our with yous and our candles lit and our desert trails, all the things.
Yeah, I do love that our with yous just really genuinely came from these text messages a world away, an ocean apart, you know, different hemispheres. That it's not just a little phrase that we came up with, that it was just really born out of the genuine darkness and candle lighting that felt like the only thing we had to offer each other at times. And how I love that it's just such a normal part of our language now. It's something that we offer to each other and to really everyone else all the time, and has become such a beacon of solidarity and hope, and the, along with the bonfires on the bluff, like this is how it works.
Yeah, it's that I can't fix this, but I'm not leaving you. You're not alone. Yeah.
This is a section from a piece called 30,000 Feet, which is our leaving Thailand, not only after months of heartbreak and ruin, watching our lives burn down around us, and knowing that we would have to go home sooner than planned, but then also really just the actual getting on the plane and the traveling home, just hours after we had found out that what we thought we were leaving was only a part of the story, after we had found out the significance and the depth of the trauma that had actually taken place. So we were in full fight or flight, full survival mode in this piece. And I still feel it, even just thinking about reading it. But the section that I want to share is really about that liminal space, like you had said, Sarah, that in between of everything having burned down and the loss and the grief, and yet not quite to the point of rebuilding. Not quite to the point of knowing at all what's next, but just that no man's land of desolation where all feels lost and the night feels the darkest. And all of that is that space, I think that, so many of us, we can find our stories within each other's pages because we all know those moments. So that's the space that this section of this piece comes from, and that desire to just stay hidden in the liminal space between. I stare out the airport windows over the meticulously manicured garden in Bangkok. I watch the snow fall on the tarmac. Excuse me. I watch the snowfall on the tarmac outside in Seoul. I'm lost in the fog surrounding the international terminal as we clear customs in Seattle. I scowl at the familiar saguaros reaching up from the desert floor along the concourse in Phoenix. I try to stop our forward motion. I want to walk backward in these airports, to hide in the bathroom, to disappear. I try to dig my heels into the moving sidewalks, to stay in the in-between, suspended between what has burned to the ground and what is going to require all of us to rebuild. Maybe we can just stay in the airports, never passing through the next gate and never getting our baggage from the carousel. I'm constantly looking behind me, paranoid we are being followed, terrified of being seen, and yet desperate to be seen, all at the same time. Someone please see me. Isn't that how it often goes? In our most vulnerable moments, when we most want to be put out of our misery and swallowed whole by our pain, we are simultaneously desperate for someone to see through us, someone to slice us wide open and witness the bloody cross-section of our survival, all the little deaths buried inside. Someone who knows the toll of bringing a knife to a gunfight and recognizes the loss scrawled all over our bodies. Trudging through the long terminal corridor, we eventually see our people. a small handful of family and friends who showed up to welcome us home. They are pointing and waving and smiling, having seen us coming a long way off. I wince at their happiness. They know about the past couple of months, but they don't yet know about the past couple of days. They have no idea who they are waving to and cannot see the invisible baggage we are dragging behind us. I know I'm supposed to feel grateful, but every step closer to them is a step further away from the safety of the cocoon we've been suspended in. It's a step closer to the harsh reality awaiting us here in the desert. One by one, we each fall into their arms. Going through the motions of trading hugs and kisses, I wonder if their fingertips can sense the haunted catacombs just beneath my skin. I see the joy on their faces, and their mouths are moving in the shape of words about how good it is to have us home. But like an old war film, after a landmine detonates, and the only sound is a ringing in the ears, I cannot hear or feel a thing. I am numb to their touch. Feels just a little more distant each time. Mm-hmm. And yet, I remember her. I remember her so desperate to just hide, to just want to hide in that airport. I remember thinking, I could live here. I could live here in Sky Harbor Airport. There's food. There's, like I could just live here. Like I was so afraid.
Yeah.
I was so afraid to leave the airport because that meant I was going to have to figure out my life. I was going to have to figure out what to do next. And I just had no capacity for that.
Yeah. That makes
so
sense.
I remember kind of walking into a bit of a trance, kind of a blur of going through those motions and what came next. My system was so overwhelmed with those flight responses where we actually felt like we were running and escaping and fleeing, and nobody knew why. So yeah, that was, I still feel it rolling through.
Yeah. Yeah, like a wave roll on through. Yep. Mm-hmm. Your writing is so visceral. Whenever I read one of your pieces, I feel like I'm watching a movie. Like I feel like I can see it like a scene. When you were writing, like that scene, that moment is like a scene, and I feel like I'm in it watching you, and it's so vivid. And that feeling that you describe of wanting to be seen and not wanting to be seen at the same time, and that moment when your family, your loved ones see you and spot you, and the expectation, which is so pure and makes so much sense, that they're so genuinely excited to see you, and it's been this, and yet that sense of like, oh, how can you possibly find it within yourself to mirror that back, and they don't yet know, and even just like trying to find the energy to summon, like there's just, you don't have it, and just, oh, I can just feel it. I just, the way you were able to bring us with you and through that piece, it made it feel so urgent and so real, right there with you.
What's interesting about that piece is that we have photos from it.
Oh, wow.
You know, like our family taking pictures of us as they see us coming. And it's like to see photos of myself, like so ashen and so like being able to see right through it, being able to see right through that photo, you know? I think of, you know, often we think of lyrics, right? And it's like, can you see right through me? I see right through me. Can you see right through me? You know, from the Archer. So looking at those photos, that's what, looking at the kids,
Yeah.
You know, looking at Eric and myself as we're just coming from a long way off. And I think that idea of taking a photo during a difficult moment and not realizing how different the perspective is from the person taking the photograph and the person being photographed. Because you know what you're thinking, you know what you're feeling. So to look back at that, I think, oh, they thought they were taking a picture of a beautiful homecoming. Mm-hmm. Little did they know they were taking a picture of us as corpses.
Right. Well, and from their perspective, it was, right? In their memory, it was. And that's that both and, it's all true. And,
yeah,
you do write earlier in 30,000 Feet about kind of stopping yourself. You have this sort of moment of wanting to take a selfie and then having kind of this awareness, this clarity come over you of, what am I doing? Why are we pretending? What am I asking here? And I think that is so profound. That to me felt like a moment of your motherhood catching up to your, I don't know how to describe this, Corinne. I don't know if you have words for how you would describe what that was for you, what was happening in that moment that was registering for you, that connection that was happening, that was shifting kind of in real time that you capture in that part.
Well, I think that as parents, we can relate to any moment where our desire to keep our kids safe overrides whatever it is that we're personally experiencing. So, that piece, that part in the chapter that you're referring to where I'm trying to take a picture while we're on the plane, and it's like our deepest grief. And catching myself in that moment, realizing that we don't need a photo to remember this moment. It's a moment that we will try to forget for the rest of our lives. And yet that was my attempt, kind of my default in my motherhood, was to try to rally, to try to create a moment that was better than what was actually true, right? Like to somehow spin something for my kids so that the grief was a little less deep, or, the flight away from this life that they had come to live would be a little less painful. Because we couldn't tell them the fullness of why we were leaving. We couldn't tell them the fullness of why it was so rushed and why it was so chaotic. So I think there was this desperation in my motherhood to make it better, to spin it, to put a better veneer on it, even just for a moment, just for them, and having to catch myself in that moment and put my phone away because it was an offense to capture our grief that way.
Oof. Yeah. And it's like best of intentions, right? Like
Sure.
Such a beautiful motivation, coming from such a beautiful motivation, and yet being able to catch yourself in real time and look at it from a different angle and go, whoa, what are we doing? I have so many stories like that too. When I look back at that time, I think it's even like what I was saying about speaking to, like, what I would do differently. And again, from such a place of like, just, you're in a place of survival, and you're operating from
Absolutely.
like that instinctive, like, especially as a mom, like, keep them safe, and nothing feels safe. And so we go to such extremes, and we're not thinking clearly, and you don't know who you can trust, and everything feels upside down, and you're not sleeping, and you're not eating, and there's so much. And really, I think what we'll speak to a lot in what we get into next week as we dive into Rise is how long it took to come out of survival, to even begin, not even healing, but just like to really take a deep breath for the first time again. I stayed pretty bound and wrapped tight in survival for a long time, even after coming back to the desert, even after we left Illinois, before I could even begin to attempt healing myself. Yeah.
I think there is, whether it's in parenting or whether it's just in relationship, it's the desperation of being in a moment where there's no plan. There's no answers.
Yeah.
There's no good explanations, like where you don't have anything to offer the people around you except for your like actual physical presence, to not be able to not know what you're going to do next, to not know how you're going to respond, to not know what action you're going to take, to not know anything, to not know what you do the next day. I think that is a level of survival and desperation that is so disorienting. And I think that's another intersection for our stories that we've shared here today, is just being in that moment of complete disorientation and not knowing what's next and not knowing what's on the other side. Not having any idea how we're going to heal, how we're going to make breakfast the next morning, none of it. The most simple things, the most complex things, just having no answers. That's a bit of a death, I think, that that takes a while to come back from. And having to do that in real time with our people, right? It's much easier when you can be like, okay, kids, here's the plan. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how it's going to go. But having your kids and your people around you watching you have no fucking clue what you're going to do or how you're going to survive, like that's a vulnerability and a humility that is leveling in itself. I think both of our pieces, your memorial, and then this moment for me of feeling like a catacomb,
Catacomb, yes.
Where that's our shared space here, is that death of what was.
Yeah, and having no idea what would come next. And I mean, everyone has a story like that at some point in their life. It's an unavoidable part of being human. It's because it's part of change. It's part of growth. For it to be something new, we must move out of something old. It's the shedding of the skin. It's that snake skin, that whole, it's an unavoidable part of the human experience. And so I think as we speak to that, it's really the understanding that as it's the threshold. Where we leave off in ruin is the threshold. You can't stay in ruin forever. You're at the tip, and it's that moment of what's going to be next. You can't go back to what was. It doesn't exist anymore. You made a decision, and you're on to something else, but you don't know what it is yet, and you're at the end of yourself. Yeah, you are no longer exactly who you were before. You don't know who you are, and you're not alone. And you're not just accountable for yourself. And so there's just so much. And that's really where we find ourselves in that moment in our lives. Yeah. Until next episode, really.
Until next episode. Yeah. So what I love is that the magnitude of these experiences that we've shared stretches out the boundaries and creates this really big open space for us to find each other and find ourselves in between the pages of each other's stories. So it's like you don't have to have experienced something, like I don't have to have experienced what you went through and vice versa. And then collectively, we don't all have the exact same experiences, and yet the truth is universal. And the way that we relate is so closely woven and so closely connected. So my hope is that as these really big stories get spread out on the pages, in front of us and in front of each listener and reader, that there's those moments, those Me Too and With You moments that get found in all the different and complex ways that our stories overlap, our map lines overlap. So I love that about our stories, in that they make so much room for the wild and crazy and unpredictable ways that all of our lives unfold, that there's room for all of it and it all belongs, no matter how simple or complex the details could be. Add that to the list of things that we're not going to say.
Okay, so instead of those things, we're going to say, welcome to Spiritual Pyro. We're so glad you're here.
We're so glad you're still here.
Thanks for being here.
The 1C Story Network, for the love of stories.